I request Dr. Vinay Sahasrabuddhe, President ICCR, to kindly make his welcome remarks.
Honorable Minister for External Affairs, Dr. S. Jaishankar, our DG Kumar Tuhin, and academics who have come from as many as 39 countries, and also academics from India. Dr. Jaishankar is here because he is also an academic. He has written several books, and when recently we had a kind of a seminar involving persons teaching international relations, he was very enthusiastic and keen and saying that I'm also a student of international relations. So somebody who is an academic at the core is here amongst us. Thank you very much, sir. Even though the parliament session is going on, he took out time and came over here. We are really grateful. Simply to give a background, these are the academics. Many of them are heads of departments, and as I said, representing several countries from Brazil to Japan and Sweden to Sri Lanka. So the entire perhaps global community is represented over here. Later on, they will be sitting in groups and discussing Buddhist studies, Sanskrit, Indology, music and dance, Indian classical music and dance, and yoga and Ayurveda. And the discussions will be led by senior academics representing apex level educational institutions, mostly government institutions in India. Tomorrow, they will also be discussing the career opportunities that could be made available to the students passing out of their departments, in which we are involving organizations like FICCI, CII, Tourism Development Corporation, and the Ayurveda Drug Manufacturers Association, so on and so forth. So it's a first of its kind, a unique exercise, and we are really happy that we are being blessed by a person no less than our Foreign Minister, Shri Jaishankar ji. Most welcome, sir.
India, that is Bharat, is an ancient and mother civilization with the unique philosophy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which was a part of the G20 motto during India's presidency of G20. I request Dr. S. Jaishankar, Honorable Minister for External Affairs, Government of India, to kindly speak on the subject of building a Bharat narrative. Dr. S. Jaishankar.
Dr. Vinay Sahasrabuddhe, Ambassador Kumar Tuhin, dear friends, first of all, let me say what a great pleasure it is to see so many of you assembled here. You are in many ways the pathways for India to the rest of the world. You are really living bridges in that sense. And I'm glad that ICCR has taken this initiative, not just this initiative, but many others, whereby all of you have opportunities really to build deeper bonds with India, because you have all dedicated your lives to India and an understanding of India. Therefore, when Dr. Sahasrabuddhe told me about this event, I myself was very keen to have an opportunity to come and share some thoughts. Now, the subject which I thought would be appropriate at this time is building a Bharat narrative, because in many ways that is exactly what is happening in India. Now, what does it mean, building a Bharat narrative? People sometimes see it as politics. Sometimes they look at the word play and think that this is some kind of linguistic message. But if you look at really the term Bharat, and I'm not getting into the origins of the word or the history of the concept, it today actually has multiple symbolisms in different domains. Economically, I would say, or economics-wise, we would speak about a Atmanirbhar Bharat. So it has a connotation of a certain resilience, a certain self-sufficiency, a contribution, uh, a talent out there, which is expressing itself. Developmentally today, when we speak about Bharat, it also implies a commitment about creating an inclusive, just, fair society where no one is left behind. And that is actually, in many ways, the true test of development. Politically, Bharat is a statement of independence. It is a declaration that as India engages the world, it doesn't have to be done necessarily in terms set by others or in frameworks determined by others, that our objective in that engagement is in many ways to actually let our own personality and our own, I would say, innate qualities come out. So it is in ways, I would say, an expression of the persona of a society. And then there is, of course, the cultural domain. When we speak about Bharat, we could be speaking about our languages, our traditions, our heritage, our practices. And when it comes to the world, really the Bharat that we seek to set the narrative about is a Bharat which would like to be perceived as a Vishwamitra, as a friend which at crucial moments has really stepped up in a way in which countries and societies normally don't do in international relations. A society where people are still being vaccinated but is willing to share those vaccines with the rest of the world. A society where when we have a chance to assume a responsibility, like we did at the G20, that we did so with a cause and commitment for the global South. And actually, in many ways, as we showed again during G20, a culture that is able to harmonize, that at a time when the world is so deeply divided, where very frankly, not everybody expected us to succeed in our G20 presidency, we were able to find a bridge both between the East and the West and between the North and the South. Now, when we speak about Bharat today, it is also in many ways linked to, I would say, a change in the way in which we look ahead. Typically, governments look at the term that awaits them. So the thinking of a government runs from an election to an election. And in that country, at best, that is a 5-year plan that you can have. Today, we are talking about an Amrit Kal, a 25-year vision, where we actually think that we would see a remarkable transformation in our country. And we will be able to, in many ways, address a lot of historical problems while establishing our place in the international order. So when I lay out that kind of meaning of Bharat before you and all that it implies in terms of India's interactions with the world, you would ask yourself how it would impact on your own lives and on your own professions, on your own specializations. Here I would make 3 comments. One, that clearly as India becomes more relevant and more important and more central to global developments and global thinking, the value of Indology will commensurately grow. So when we look at an Amrit Kal for India, I also look at an Amrit Kal for Indology. And I can say with a fair amount of confidence that everything that you have been doing will actually have a greater and greater value in the coming years. The second is actually this challenge today of interpreting and explaining and connecting with this changing India. Because my own experiences, so many things have actually transformed in the last decade. And there is a lag where the world is concerned about understanding it. And a lot of that lag is because the interpreters of India to the world are actually people who do not know necessarily India very well. Very few of them probably speak any Indian language. Their circle of contacts is probably much narrower than yours. They probably have lived here in a very, not in as intense a way as those of you who have devoted your lives to the study of India have done. So one of our challenges has been that how does one communicate to the world what is happening in India, this can be a misreading of something as practical as an election result, or perhaps something much deeper about actually what are the social forces at work in India, or even an understanding of the debates in India. That sometimes when having participated in those debates at home, I listen to the versions abroad. I feel sometimes almost like we are in two different planets. So how does one get the understanding of this evolving India, of this changing India, of a society that has democratized so deeply today, that a lot of its leadership and its thought processes are actually being driven by by people and by forces which are so deeply Indian, which are so grounded, which are so rooted in India. And the third, of course, is to familiarize the world more and more with our culture, heritage, and traditions. Because at the end of the day, it is going to be more important for the world to understand the thinking of India. If we have a situation where other parts of the world are trying to force fit India into their constructs, then it is going to be difficult for them to really grasp what is happening in our country. And let me give you a few examples. We often speak about democracy. We should have politics with values and beliefs, and say democracies must come together. Now, many of you know Indian history as well as we do, perhaps some of you even better. And you're all aware how deep the consultative culture has been in Indian society. And also how widespread is the sense of pluralism. That this is a society which has never ever imposed uniformity on the people who populate it, which has in fact never even seen uniformity as a virtue. That intrinsically, innately, we have always actually seen in diversity multiple expressions of a certain unity. And today, therefore, when we have these debates about democracy, and sometimes, as part of the political narrative, there is always this game, who is a better democracy, where is democracy doing better, where is it not? People give marks, certificates, report cards on this. Now, this is a culture where actually that pluralism and that tradition of consultation and confabulation has been going on for thousands of years. That if any of you looked at any part of India which you are studying, the first thing you would see is actually a kind of a group exchange on any subject which is under discussion. So, how to convince the world that democracy was not something which began with the 1950 constitution? That actually the Constitution of India reflected what were already deeply ingrained views in this country. Well, let me take a very different example. Well-being, personal well-being, and lifestyle. Now, there is a lot of concern today in the world about the state of the planet, and rightly so, that the manner in which humankind has treated nature, especially over the last few hundred years, is clearly having a very visibly damaging impact on the well-being of the planet. Now, the Indian way, the natural Indian way, when confronted with such a challenge, is actually to see whether lifestyles can adjust to lessen the impact on the well-being of the planet. So, the debates in India on how to take climate action, how to improve environment, how to protect the planet, tend to be also inclusive of the idea that our lifestyles need to change. Similarly, when it comes to even our well-being, I mean, I think you have a session with Ayush, no? So, there are traditions and knowledge over thousands of years. And if after all those traditions and knowledge have passed on for thousands of years, there must be a lot out there which multiple generations would have valued and nurtured. Now, we are today the host to a global WHO Global Center on Traditional Medicine. So, I mentioned this to you because often, these are seen as some kind of idiosyncrasy or a foible of a people, of a culture, or of a certain group. These are part actually of a broader knowledge reservoir, actually of humankind. And it is only those who have a certain emotional investment in India and in India's knowledge and in India's thinking, who will be able to grasp it and who will be able to communicate it to others. Dr. Sahasrabuddhe mentioned an event which we just had a few days ago in Pune. Let me say a few words about that because it may be of interest to some of you. The event was essentially focused on why is it that we, the students of international relations and diplomacy, study the world really through completely Western constructs. I'm not saying that there is anything wrong with Western constructs, but I would say in a planet which has so many cultures, to view all cultures through the lens of one culture would at the very least be doing injustice to the other cultures, but would probably, even for the culture which is viewing it, would actually create lack of understanding. So, if one looks, in fact, because it is international relations has been so monocultural, you actually have a widespread belief that many other societies do not have traditions of statecraft. Now think about it. This is a society which, let us say, is 5,000 years old. How can you have 5,000 years of human existence divided into states of various kinds who have come together and competed with each other and not have statecraft? I mean, in a way, it defies logic. And yet it is an assumption that is widely propagated, saying, there's no strategic culture in India, strategic thinking is very limited. So what often happens is that lack of knowledge leads to very sweeping generalized theories where, because I don't know you, it's my belief you don't have it. So these are some of the challenges that we need to correct. Again, I say this to you primarily because my own educational line is international relations. Even as one looks at an issue like ethics, ethics and politics, the Western world has its own developed debate on this subject. But it is a debate which is very much set in a certain value framework. That is not necessarily the framework which would be prevalent in other societies. Certainly, I can say not in India. So in India, still there would be a premium put on ethics, and stark real politic will not necessarily gain admiration. I mean, there may be you can have a certain norm and value, and there may be occasions for exceptions, but you would rarely find an Indian who would say the exception should be the rule. So, in 365 days, let us do real politics for 364 and do ethics for 1 day in a year. It would be the opposite. So, I mention this to you because whether it is knowledge, whether it is learning, whether it is practice, whether it is in fact our daily life, I think every culture sets its own practices and traditions into motion. And if we are actually looking at a more connected world, at a more diverse world, to me, this communication between cultures is today of great value. I again return to the example of the G20. The G20 were the 20 largest economies of the world in the year 2008. So when you say, this is you can say right now, the most important global grouping, economically, yes, that would be so. Perhaps politically also, because a lot of politics flows from economics. But while we've had economic rebalancing and there is a political rebalancing going on, it is also important that there is a cultural rebalancing. That how do the big cultures or the main cultures of the world actually communicate with each other? How do they among themselves have the conversations so that the world will not be multipolar if the world is monocultural? That until, when we speak about democracy, we may have democracy within a society, but there has to be a democracy among societies as well. If there are 200 countries of the world, there are at the very least at least 200 cultures of the world. And how do we give value and respect to all of them? I think that in many ways is the big question facing the world today. And for me personally, having worked in many embassies, I've seen how much Indologists have done in terms of shaping India's image and promoting an understanding of India in the countries and societies where they work. And I can only say that, my very presence here today is a statement of the value that we put to the work which all of you are doing. And as frankly, as India grows, as we ascend, you can say, the hierarchy of international relations, I see more and more relevance and importance for what all of you are doing. And certainly, I would say in the last few years, ICCR has done an enormous amount to build closer ties with the Indologist community across the world. And I would certainly be very supportive of any initiative to deepen those ties, to find ways, because we were again at the Vishwa Hindi Sammelan in Fiji. And I hope, if, for example, in future years, we see much more participation of those who teach Hindi and Sanskrit on such occasions, not just from India, but from across the world. But again, in India or even regionally, I think it would be useful for us, just as we have ambassadors, we among our ambassadors, we do an annual meeting of ambassadors, but we also have regional meeting of ambassadors. So I would say that such gatherings, partly motivational, but also partly so that people, there's a continuous rub between people who are in policy positions, people who have a genuine commitment to promoting Indology in the world, with those who are actually taking on that responsibility. Once again, I want to say it's really a very great pleasure to meet all of you, and I wish your gathering all success. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will have a small interactive session with the Honorable Minister. If you have any questions, kindly introduce yourself and then ask them.
Hello. I'm Idmar Theodore from Israel, Indologist. Thank you so much, Minister for External Affairs, for a very enlivening and encouraging talk. It certainly makes us happy to hear that with India's growth, also our Indology will become more prominent or important. As you're an intellectual, I allow myself to ask something a little theoretical. You spoke about various ethical systems, Western and Indian. Now, the classical Indian system is Dharma, of course. And my question is, and it can remain theoretical, do you see a way of implementing Dharma in the current state of affairs, 21st century, kind of bringing that notion of Dharma into something practical which can work out in this time? That's the question.
My short answer to you would be a yes, but it would be a very imperfect yes. Because what has happened is, in the last many centuries, the norms which were set actually were such that it justified winning at any cost. So it's sort of skirted the Dharma issue by limiting it to very specific domains and activities. So the overall narrative is, in a sense, might is right and winner is takes all. That was the overall narrative, with sections where you would say, I need rules here, I need a regime there, I need a kind of a value system here. When, after all, the whole purpose of any kind of international order is really to have a sense of restraint and a sense of accommodation and a sense of roots. So I certainly, as a foreign minister, cannot tell you that the world right now is predominantly practicing it. But I would say, there are ways of doing it. We may use different terms. I mean, we in today would use the term reputational cost. It has the same meaning. You know, after all, which country or which leader or which organization or which party would like to be perceived in a negative light? So I do think that to the extent that countries are willing to take that line, and you know, I gave this example of vaccines, that you know, the fact that a country itself in the midst of vaccination could give vaccines as far away as the Caribbean. You know, people are asking themselves in the Caribbean. This is the Caribbean. There were big vaccine production centers close by. There were big stockpiles of vaccine there. But why didn't they get it from those stockpiles? Why did it have to come from the other end of the world? So somewhere I think the idea of decency, the idea of humanitarian, you know, these are not, these are not NGO sentiments. They are actually of value in real life. And my sense is, if enough countries feel there is, even self-interest makes you, you know, you can practice dharma for self-interested reasons. So I would be very much with you in that.
Thanks a lot. Hans-Werner Wessler from Uppsala in Sweden. I'm an Indologist myself. Thanks for your kind words. But it's very interesting. We see all over in the Western world where we have these small departments, traditional departments of Indology, in some places also South Asian studies or whatever you call the baby, that we are in a crisis. We are in a state of decline. As you know, a lot of these old chairs have been abolished in recent years or endangered at least. And the interest in Sanskrit, and the same is also true for Hindi, is on the decline just now. It's interesting, it doesn't fit to the growing importance, as you mentioned, the growing importance of India in international relations and all these things, and the awareness of India, the presence of India in the world. I don't have a clear clue to this question, why this is the case. It has to do with the Orientalism debate, of course. It has to do with changing knowledge economies in the West. It also has to do with the job opportunities. I see this in my own big department where Chinese is the strongest language because of the job opportunities that go with Chinese. So I just wonder how, I mean, in a way, the strength of English in India is a big asset. I completely agree to that. It's very good. And let's say the sense of otherness, because we're talking of Indian knowledge system, the sense of otherness, I'm aware of the problem with the term otherness, of course, is stronger with China because of the non-presence of English there. So with India, I've personally seen this in discussions with people from other fields in the Chamber of Commerce and things like this. It's perceived as an Anglophone country, and which also means that we don't have to care so much about other knowledge systems and all these things. So that's the perception. I'm just talking in green terms. So what can we do to change this? It also, I mean, I belong to these people who try to support in a way the Hindi cause in the world. I've been in Fiji and all these things. So what can we do to get this thing with Hindi further on so that it could eventually also create job opportunities, which is the key to strengthening Hindi, I believe?
No, I absolutely share the concern you have expressed. And like you, I don't have a ready answer. I would say that the answer is somewhere in the job opportunity space. I also agree with you that in many ways, and it's ironical that I'm saying it in English to you, that English has been a mixed blessing. Because what has happened is, for a large part of the world, the unspoken assumption is, I really don't need to invest in understanding India because the Indians will make that effort to come and talk to me anyway. So, and having lived in China, I know exactly the point that you are making, which is, I look even in my own profession of diplomacy, when I look at the diplomats working and living in China, who will almost invariably study the language. whereas it's very rare to meet a diplomat working in India who will know any Indian language, because the belief is I can figure it out in English. But here's the problem. Increasingly, it's a misleading method of actually gauging the feel and the thoughts of Indian society. It worked when you can say the thought processes of Delhi or of a relatively more limited circle were the thought processes of the national state. But as you see, today, much more diverse, in-depth sort of representation, I'm now talking at the political level. That is a very misleading assumption, because those are no longer the people who you can say are setting policy or shaping the direction of the country. So I would imagine at some stage there would be a desire to understand better what is happening in India, and my hope is that it would lead other countries, other societies to make that investment. But I would say, as people who are in charge at this end, we do need to not wait for them to do that, but really relook at how, a lot of the support which has been given but which has been having its ups and downs, how do we do it better? I think it is a very, very valid point.
Thank you very much for your inspiring talk. Chris Kessler from Berlin, Germany. I still haven't quite understood where do you see the role for non-Indian ambassadors for Indian knowledge as per the Bharat narrative? This remains somewhat unclear to me. I sort of can guess it, but I still like to have a few more words from you.
No, I didn't fully understand your question, meaning where do I see the role for?
Well, in this room, there's a lot of non-Indian ambassadors for Indian culture. From Europe, from South America, from Africa. And where do you see us as being non-native Indian? What is our role? Where do you see our role, within this, what you call Bharat narrative?
I would say, in a sense, you would be intuitive appreciators of the narrative. I mean, the narrative may not have been presented to you as a clear construct in whichever field we are talking about. But let us say the difference between you, sir, and somebody else who may be interested in India but doesn't have that knowledge or understanding or insight of India would be that you would be much quicker to grasp what is happening and appreciate, the thought processes behind it. Whereas, as I go back to what your other colleague asked, whereas someone who, let us say, studies India exclusively through a generalized medium, could be, newspapers, briefing books, social media, they would have a much different understanding. So I would say that the value of people who really have invested in understanding the depths of Indian society is obviously very much more. And so, because this debate will actually grow in the next 25 years. It's a debate which is primarily ours within India. We are today actually debating what is our aggregate cumulative response to the last many centuries of our own history, and now how do we go forward? But only those who have some sense of our own debates and some sense of our own, the forces at work, and what are the what is the argumentation with them, will have a grasp of it. So you would have an accuracy which I suspect many others will not have.
Thank you, sir. I'm sorry we'll have to conclude because that was the last question, and the Honorable Minister has a very hectic schedule. We are just very honored that you took time out for us and shared his invaluable views with us. Thank you very much, sir.